Welcome to the Deconstruction Podcast. We've started a new series called Social City, where we explore people who are having a positive impact in the construction industry. Before we jump into the podcast, I'd like to introduce myself. My name's Morgan. I have 10 years experience across design, construction, and social responsibility. I'm one of the directors of Helix Impact, where we're helping businesses and projects to have a positive impact in the construction industry and our communities. Let's jump into the episode. We're going to hear from Keiron about the meaningful change he's created in his communities.
Okay, hello and welcome to the Social City Podcast. This is our second crack at having a go at being podcasters for Morgan and I. And we have a very special guest with us today, Keiron Lander. Keiron's been a great mate of mine for a long time. He was lucky enough to marry an amazing woman who I count as a friend. And so he's ended up on the hit list of a friend of mine as well. So I'm really pleased that he accepted the offer to come and talk to us today. Keiron has a really inspiring history and also is laying the foundations for what I think the construction industry and also the community of the future has a lot to learn from. Keiron's insight and his experience, and we're going to ask him to share a bit of that with us today. Thanks very much for joining us on the podcast, Keiron. I'm going to ask you to start off with giving us a bit of an intro about who you are and what you're doing. Obviously, being construction lawyers, and also we have recently launched Helix Impact, and we have Helix Compliance that does due diligence in the construction industry. So we're really deep into what's happening in the construction industry and how we can create a better, more inclusive construction industry. So I think if we start off with a little bit about your personal history and who you are and where you've come from, I think that'll set us in good stead for some of the hot questions Morgan and I have for you this morning.
Thank you. I think if I'm very special, what is the next person behind me? Very special too?
Very special too.
Extra special.
So
all very special people that we talk to, Keiron.
My name's Keiron Lander. I'm a proud Indigenous man from Western Queensland. My connections are to what we know as the Mithaka people, Dieri people, and down to Wilcannia, Barkindji through my great-grandmother and grandmother, and there'll be some other connections there somewhere. My story is, I don't think it's unique to me, but it's not unique to any other First Nations person in this country. But I grew up in Western Queensland, primarily raised by my grandmother as a primary carer from an early age, I think about 18 months. I was in foster care till my grandmother got custody of me and my twin sister. And from there we moved to Quilpie, a little town in Western or southwest Queensland, approximately just shy of 1,000 kilometres west of Brisbane. So I grew up loving the bush, really enjoyed what it offered from a sense of exploring, adventure, fishing, camping, friendship and community, and wrapped around with, I suppose, those family values of, good manners, helping others, doing what's right, and if not, look out. So I was adventurous. We never had all the flashy things or the toys, but a love for football or rugby league, a love for going to the river whenever we could, particularly in the summer, swimming from sun up to sundown, going away on little sports carnivals or travelling to the local town, sometimes a 800-kilometre round trip playing rugby league. Wow. And so I'm very grateful for, the mums and dads and grandparents and community that would either put us in their car or we'd get a bus or, we'd find a way. I suppose primary school was difficult at times. I really struggled from the sense of, concentration, sitting still in class. I was good at certain elements of education. I enjoyed maths. I loved sports. I didn't mind, I suppose, the manual arts components. I found science difficult. I found English difficult. And I suppose that's when you become your most disruptive. So I was one of those disruptive people. So I'm very grateful, I suppose, for some of those amazing teachers that, one, put up with my rubbish, but two, and reinforce the good in me. At I suppose year 6, I was heading to sort of the country, working on stations, particularly at West Windora, or in the shearing sheds in holidays, or at the trucking yard. So I just loved to be out. But I also knew that my ticket out of Quilpie or opportunity to play rugby league was through high school. So I was lucky to go to Downlands College in Toowoomba. I was able to get some ab study to help fund for my scholarship or fees, whatever you want to call it. Where I spent 5 years, and I eventually graduated at Downlands College, being one of the first in my family. There was cousins and that around me that were a bit older that went there as well and graduated. So just seeing them go away and succeed sort of gave me some aspirations and goals to go, well, if I want to play sports, there's not much sports in Quilpie. Rugby league in the summer and cricket in the winter, and if you didn't play those sports, you had to have a horse or a motorbike, and I had neither of them, nor did I enjoy the competitive side of those things. So school was good. I learned a lot, that and some really, I suppose, important people in that journey that sort of shaped or reshaped who I should be, as a good person, more so than a good sportsman. And good sportsmen are good people. So, I had to learn how to be patient, learn how to control my temper for different reasons. I was quick to fight at times, and not always for the right reason. But those people, that I talk of at that school, or my mates' parents at school, they're a big influence. So I eventually graduated. I spent 4 years doing landscape gardening with a company called Landscape Resources, Tony and Mick Logan. And I think without them, I probably wouldn't have finished year 12. I just needed that outlet to be physical and use the other assets that I had. And I wasn't sitting in learning English. I was, as I said, very disruptive. And so, I saw the path to Brizzy, where I would come and try my skills and my determination in rugby league. So I spent a few years in the sort of first grade system here in Queensland, playing rugby union and rugby league. I had my challenges with injuries, I always talk about pretty lights and pretty girls, and being from the bush and how to, maintain some discipline in an environment that was new to me wasn't always straightforward. And I think of those times and how do I use that experience to help other young men or women that may be moving from a remote or regional area to a place like Brisbane or Sydney or Townsville, and what sort of influence and environment do they need to succeed? So, I went through some ups and downs, and spent some time at, pretty amazing clubs, being the Broncos and the Cowboys, and some times at the Queensland Reds, where I was sort of running out of patience and luck, where I thought I need to do something with my life. And, during that time I met my wife in her salon, and, this lady is, okay, and the sort of things
I remember those.
Progressed from there. Happily married now, 2016 I got married, so 9 years this year. So I got over the 7-year itch, I think that's what they call it. I've been itching the whole time. And, 3 amazing kids. But I think, to where I am today, looking back, there's been a lot of influential people in my life that's helped shape me and continually shape me. And then I try to use those, I suppose, experiences, both good and bad, to help my own kids or the work that I do currently at Young Guns. I suppose just some now. So I've worked with our people for as long as I can remember, trying to help a young kid become a better sports person, a better person, improve a skill or an experience, or just to even have a touch point that is positive. And I spent 12 years at the Institute for Indigenous Health, which was a big journey for me, coming from community but not really understanding this amazing organisation called Community Controlled, and where I would learn what community control actually looked like. Now, I grew up in that environment in the West. It was a community that come together, but then moving to Brisbane trying to find what community looked like. And I found it, and where I spent the best part of 12 years developing my skills, but also using those skills to help others. And out came what we know now as Deadly Choices, a preventative health strategy that aims to empower people to make good choices of health, nutrition, exercise, seeing your doctor early, understanding the risks and impacts of smoking and alcohol and other things. So I've had that journey a little bit in the construction before I started, and now taking those skills into a place called Young Guns Containers Crew, or Young Guns Crew, where we use or leverage our business to help the most marginalised in our community, Aboriginal and Torres Strait young people, get ready for work. Right, low barrier entry level, start to understand the bases they're coming from and how do we improve their knowledge, improve some skills, and most importantly, make sure they're confident that they can give something a go and start to then learn and navigate a career, or at least a journey of looking at work as an empowerment for purpose for living, but also people around them that positively reinforce that they have strengths, they have abilities, and we've just got to unlock them essentially. So yeah, a little bit of my story in a small scale.
From a business point of view, what are the benefits that you see from that diverse workforce, or that a different generation? Or I think we talk a lot about the good stuff that we do, which is great for everybody who's on that journey. But I think for all those people who aren't sure where to start or what to do, or have that little bit of fear about doing something different, sometimes we have to actually talk about that business case and the benefits to business as well, not just the benefit of the people that we're helping. Because if we don't have a business, we can't help anyone at all, right? So from a business point of view, what do you see as some of the characteristics that help build your business or put you in a better competitive advantage from having a diverse workforce?
Well, I think from the get-go, the workforce was around people coming together to solve a problem. So it was never about what skill sets you had, it was actually the effort collectively. And then over time, the industry and Young Guns is an example that it is a male-dominated. It's labourish work. And we're now, over 20 years, we've found ourselves in sort of new types of work that is more setting for not just males but females. But we've got different ethnic groups from Indian to Sudanese to African to Pacific Islanders to Maori. And diversity creates inclusion. It's not diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
Right? You can't have inclusion without diversity.
No.
Right? And for Indigenous people, we're the most diverse cultures in the world. So we've been doing diversity for a long time. Coming together to understand what are our similarities, what are our differences, but working towards a common goal for the whole community. And so I think we've done that at times really well, right? Leaders come and go. So we've got to retrain our leaders. Young people coming in, not used to, this sort of dynamics. And so you start to learn and see how that then functions. And when we get it wrong, it blows up, as you all know, right? Because it stands out, because it's not normal. That's a good thing that it blows up, right? Whether it's bullying or harassment in the workplace, we want it to blow up because it means it's not normal. If it blows up because it's been teetering for a long time, that's a concern.
Yeah.
Right. So for us, around diversity is around creating the right markets, being deliberate around how you recruit, how you train your leaders. We're looking at things, we're bringing in young women at the moment that are experiencing homelessness. They want to work. Like, that excites me. And so it's my job to ensure that our leaders on site are aware of the circumstances they're coming from and put that support around them. Check in on them, right? Get to know their name and be personable from that perspective. They don't need to know their business, but they need to be there. I think the thing that you talk about particularly is around what is the mutual benefit. Whether you want to be a skilled tradesman or tradesperson, if you're a young lady just wanting to get on the tools to learn some skills to maybe project lead, I think from an employer's perspective is understanding what is that individual's goals and aspirations. What is their purpose? Is their purpose just to put food on the table? We'll understand that, and how can I support you while you support our business thriving? And that's not always easy, don't get me wrong, but I think, every time we bring a young person, or if I focus on a young person, I don't know where they come from, where they're going, I actually sit down and talk to them. We put a couple of young people on this week. We'll give you a go.
Yep.
You've got to work hard. If we don't work hard together, we don't make money. If we don't make money, I can't provide for my children. And so if you don't work hard, then you won't be able to afford the things you need to afford, right? But while you're here, don't just work hard, learn new skills. I think that, and I'm seeing it more and more, that our ability to learn to earn is fading quickly. There's an expectation that a young person I don't get paid enough to do this job. Hang on a second. Mate, these people have been on the tools for 20 years and they started sweeping. They didn't even pick up a hammer for the first year. So just starting to drive some of those values that you've got to learn the skills. And then when you learn the skills, you get responsibilities. Therefore, then you'll be given responsibilities and rewarded for that.
I think that's so true in any industry. It's the same thing with law. No matter how well you've done at university, when you walk into a law firm and the profit on a job is completely up to the calls or the recommendations that the lawyer's going to make about what to do with a particular situation. Like, there's a lot at stake. It's not the same as, life and death law, but it is for some of the businesses, the decisions that they have to make with the advice that we give is life or death for their business sometimes. And so as a junior lawyer, kind of understanding that there's some effort and time, hard work and learning that needs to happen, even though you already feel like you've done so much learning to be able to get to that position. So I think, you're talking from your experience, but those kind of values and that need is universal across any kind of industry of anyone who might be listening to the podcast.
Yeah, and I think if you're a young person and you value your skills and knowledge, we'll demonstrate it. Don't just expect it. We've had, I've seen young people just walk out after a couple of hours because it's too much. But then go into another job, first thing they ask is, what am I paid? What we should be asking is, what am I learning? What skills can I take from this opportunity? And how is that going to help me earn later in life?
Because that's something that stays with you for the rest of your life. You can have a great employer or a terrible employer, but what you learn and the growth that happens for you between the ears that you've got and how you can take that into your next role, that's something that no one can ever take away from you, and that stays with you for the rest of your life. And even the values and the resilience that you learn in the adversity is something that you take with the rest of your career as well. So I think no matter what role you're in, no matter what you're doing, there's always something that you can learn and take away from the situation that you're in. But I'm not advocating for staying in dangerous or, difficult situations. But I think even when you reflect on those difficult situations, there's things that help shape the career that you have or the person that you are today through those difficult periods that you might have gone through during your career.
Yeah, definitely. I just think of my own children and what's ahead of them, and I'll say to them, earn to learn. Effort gets reward. But also too that an employer, you've got to identify if you're being taken for granted, and that's not good for your own mental health because you start to question your own abilities.
I think that's so true, and I think that's one of the things that I admire about you as well. And I tried to do it. I used to get criticised for you can't be friends with the people that you work with, or you shouldn't care so much about the people that you work with. And I just think that's rubbish. But there comes a point too where you have to have kind of respect for yourself and respect for the people that work for you enough to not make them go through the things that you had to go through, but also give them the freedom and the opportunity to learn the things that you learned and to be able to still work up resilience and move through a problem and things like that. And also for my children, like not stepping in and always giving the answer or being the answer.
Letting them make mistakes and we can fail safely. I think that's really important, not just at home with the kids, but at work as well. And because we do, as leaders, have that experience. So we know when we can let people, have to put in a few extra hours to get that concept right, or to try a little bit harder, or to sometimes, make a mistake to then learn the actual consequence to that, because a lot of the time we don't learn if it doesn't happen to us or we don't do it ourselves. You can be told things as much as you want, but realistically, until you give it a go yourself, you don't actually know. So I think there's a real value, and they're saying that real growth that comes from failures as well as successes.
I've been working on a bit of a project now for several years, and big part of that's been at Young Guns. But before that, I went and studied at UQ, doing my master's in business and really understanding, I suppose, economics, understanding how to grow a business, what are sort of the concepts and theories and tools. But I applied those things from a community sense and, through my own experience and research. I think for any employer, these three key principles are paramount for success of any employee or any young person coming into your business. Is seeking a meaningful connection, and one that is positive. And when you do that, you start to then build a relationship that you can start to shape through, honesty and respect and all those things. The second thing that they're seeking is safety. And you mentioned it, right, that they want to feel safe to learn, safe to be themselves, safe to share their stories without judgment, without any insight or foresight about what is their future look like versus something that has great potential. And they want to learn. Well, they really want to learn. We're talking to young people in the valley on Friday nights that experience homelessness, or they've been in child protection, or they've ended up on the streets for some reason, and every one of them would they go there for connection. Where they're coming from, there's no connection, and for our mob, it's some sort of cultural connection with other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and they're looking for safety. They feel safe with one another. It's funny. Like, we walk past it on Friday night, you won't even know they're there, but they're there, and they're with each other. And don't worry, they're having their own sort of squabbles or whatnot, but they feel safe enough to come there, connect. But what's lacking is a meaningful connection that is both positive and safe. Right? Where do they sleep at night? Ensuring that they've got a warm bed or a roof over their head or breakfast for the morning. Where do they start to look for an opportunity where they can learn? And most of those young people we'll talk to, they'll say, I have interest in mechanics, or, I'd love to work in construction. I don't think they will after they start, but they all want to learn, want to grow. And I think for us in the community, looking at social impact, looking at any impact or influence, how do we ensure that the barriers that they face, one, we can address them because they are all addressable, but just as important as addressing those barriers, we're creating strong bonds that they feel connected to, they feel safe to ask questions, to ask for guidance, to ask for help, and then tailor our approaches to learning. Some of them left school at primary school. They might have been in the system, but they never attended. And so their reading, writing abilities aren't strong, but their survival instinct is stronger than anyone because they've had to do it for, best part of 7+ years. So I think if we're looking at that from a perspective of how do we help close the disparities of young people, and it's getting worse. Young kids are dropping out of high school far greater than ever before. We talk about those who are completing. We're not talking about those who aren't. From year 7, we're seeing a lot of males and even females fall out of school. Back in the day, you could start a trade at year 10.
Yeah, and I think back then that is what happened. Like, people did stop going to school, but they always had something else. There was very few people who stopped going to school and didn't have something else that they were doing, whether that be sport or employment. So I think now there's definitely a disconnect there between, well, if you're not at school, well, what else are you doing?
Yeah, and I think the old days, right, is something we can learn, where we would pick up one kid and make them part of our workforce. And I know that's not easy because there is time pressures, there's financial pressures and other means. But even looking at from a policy perspective, how do we reform policy around traineeships, around trades to actually address the needs to ensure that this young person has the highest chance of success? A kid starting a trade on, I don't know, I think it's $12, $13 an hour. I'll have to check that in case I'll get in trouble. But it's too low. But if we don't look after them and we don't employ them, we don't have an industry. So the answer's got to be down the bottom somewhere, where how do we connect employers to these young people wanting to do a trade without financially be a burden, but address the actual need. The need is not just the dollar in the pocket. They might need home. They might need food for the first 20 weeks. Let's get you $13 an hour, but we're going to make sure you have lunch and breakfast every day. Schools started breakfast programs. Well, why can't the trade industry start food programs? That's just an example of the top, because the future of the industry, not just trades, transports, will be in dire straits. And we'll go from, hey, we don't want anyone to come into our country because we don't have enough houses. We're going to have a point we've got no workers to build a house. Double-edged sword. So there's some opportunity, I think, for our trade sector, our labour markets, our industry, and even policy to go, hang on a second, we've been doing the same thing for a long time. We're in this predicament now.
Absolutely. Our industry is a bit of a dinosaur. We're pretty well known for doing things the same way. And
our biggest problem is our greatest opportunity. How many young people in our communities aren't working, aren't at school? As an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander person, 42% of our kids aren't completing year 12. They're not in education or not in any training. And I'll tell you now, some of them do want to work because I'm picking them up. Some of them aren't ready because those barriers or their needs aren't being addressed to enable them to hold down a job. Like, that's the impact we've got to have. And I know that our non-Indigenous kids are hanging around the same crew. Right, so just as many black kids and non-Indigenous kids are in the same boat, that they mightn't have the social support at home, or they're sleeping on a couch, or they've got a grandmother looking after them, but getting to work, it's too hard. It's not too hard. We've made it too hard.
From a community perspective, as businesses, we often work in remote and regional areas as well as the metro, but what can we do as a business to engage respectfully and appropriately, especially for us in the construction industry, when you're working regionally and remotely. I think it's really important to engage with the community and let them know we're there. And what advice can you give to people? I guess sometimes we don't engage out of fear or don't know what to do or don't want to make a mistake, so we do nothing at all. So what do you think as a business going in, working in a regional area, what you can do, I guess, to make yourself known, but also build those connections and relationships with the people in the area where you are building?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I answered this only a few days ago. And think of, Australia is one country. That's how it's seen. But within Australia, there's many countries, regions and remote areas, and even in the urban setting, that before you go into any place, if you went to China, New Zealand, India, what would you do? You do your homework, know what's illegal and what's not, know where you can and can't go, and know who you should and shouldn't talk to. And that's the start. Do your homework. We've got great councils in our communities, or councillors. We've got traditional owner groups that are working in them. I know from Yarrabah to Doomadgee to Mount Isa to Roma, there's people in that communities that are they're doing the work. And so the ability to go back and build a relationship with them, understand what the community's needs are. Yes, we might be going in there to build some infrastructure. How can we leverage that infrastructure to help meet a community need? How do we develop up a local trainee and then equip the local tradesman to then take on the trainee? Because then that's a resource that tradesman mightn't be able to do at the time, but you come in with your infrastructure. They say, well, we've got 3 trainees. You've got a 12-month project here. And out of those 3, we're going to put 2 into an apprenticeship if they succeed. So it's that, that little...
The longevity beyond the 12 months that you're there building that.
Yeah, and, we got people building wraps, because that's what they are. They're wraps. They look like they're on MTV days, because that's how good they are. They're actually hopeless, right? The endeavour to do something is no good. The commitment and will to do something is different. And so what we're looking for in our communities, whether here in Southeast Queensland, Brisbane, the Sunshine Coast, or out to those remote areas, Cherbourg, Morgan, and, they're not far from us as well, is make that connection, make that relationship, understand the needs of that community, and how then we can benefit them by supporting that need, right? And looking at, putting on a person 1 day a week versus trying to get someone to work 6 days a week because that's what your project requires. So that's rubbish. If you've never worked before and you go do a 6 day a week and I get paid good money, you won't see me. I'll be at the pub. I'll be at the tab. I'll be shouting at everyone. But I think just that simple understanding, right, that we got to understand where these communities are at, what are their aspirations, what are their needs, no different to your kids. Then you then shape their aspirations through the proper influence, or trialing that sports, or putting them into that music and trialing that. Same thing with their communities. So every community you go into, think of it's a new country. I'm going into a new country, do some research, understand who the contacts are, what's legal and what's not, what road should I take in, what road should I take out if I get in trouble. But more importantly, if we can start to leverage, our skills, our knowledge and experience, it might actually be construction. It might be a school project down the road that they need, And I've done some stuff with other businesses that said, we can employ someone for 3 months. And I said, do you know the harm that'll bring to that community? You're going to so someone, for example, is relying on Centrelink because there's no jobs in that community. That's the only income they get. Now, you're going to take them off that for 3 months and then leave? What happens to them? There's no jobs. So they want a job. They've now got to pack up their family and leave their community, their home. Right? How do we create jobs? How do we create economies or maintenance, even enough skills to build enough houses in a community that 2 or 3 jobs is maintenance? Mm-hmm. Right, so just trying to get that understanding is sometimes a challenge. And our community's hurt then because I can't get back. Oh, mate, you had a job. So then I've got to try to get back and get some income to buy food and keep the lights and electricity on, but I can't. So, and that's an important part of understanding the needs and the aspirations versus, hey, we could do this and we can do that.
Or reapplying as well. Often, that understanding that that's different everywhere. That, sometimes when we worked on Palm Island, that's not the same as what you would deliver in Cairns or in Townsville or up north in Northern Territory or over in WA, because what's important to the community may be different, or what level of resources they already have can be very different. So I think sometimes we, as businesses or people who don't always get to work regionally, that you get really excited and you think that you've done something really great, and then you go to the next community and want to do something as well. So you're like, oh, we've done this before, let's, do that. But sometimes it's not always the right. So I think you're very right in saying that about research and understanding and listening. Goes back to asking the question. You don't know what you don't know. So instead of you can come in and say you have really great intentions and you want to do some really good things, but how can we help, opposed to just, this is what we're going to do for you.
Yeah. And simple way to explain that, if I walked into your house, you got your rules, right? I need to understand, if I bought my rules, we're going to have a fight, right? If I go into your house, same thing. Different rules, different context, different way of doing things. I'm sure we're all value aligned. Doesn't mean we're going to be on the same page. Right? And I think if we're going into our communities, I'm going into a new house, but I understand how this house works and what are the rules of this house. And our family or our communities and our people are so inviting. They're so, I suppose, great to be around when you start to build that relationship that's built off mutual benefit, right? We can share our knowledge with you. You share your knowledge with us, right? And we benefit from that, and our kids benefit, and our community benefits. They might need to get a traineeship. They might go, our football oval hasn't been upgraded. Our lights don't work. So we can't train in the summer because we've got no lights. Actually, why don't we invest, in the lights infrastructure so these kids can kick a footy, late afternoon when it's cooler? Look, that's not hard to think of, but we don't think of it. I think we've got to do this, or we've got to do what others are doing. And that's more, again, go back to listening.
Can you tell us a bit about the company that you've started in the construction industry and what your vision is for that company and what you're looking to achieve?
I think going to uni and, this family is special to me. I've been part of this family, 20 odd years. And the Pierces or the Lux, I spent some time at boarding school through my family with them on weekends, and they saw me grow, and they've sort of been part of my journey on and off. And then unfortunately, Craig passed away with a brain tumour when I was in high school. So, Jode lost her husband, and the kids lost a father, and I couldn't imagine what that feels like. But they're family to me. Jodie's a mother to me, someone who's very important to me, and Sam and Lockie and George, they're my siblings. And I played a role when I could. Don't worry, I had to mature too, but to be there when I could, but they were there for me just as much as I try to be there for them. And Lockie's a tradesman, been in the carpentry industry for 12 years, was sort of poking along as a sole trader. He's probably quit 3 or 4 times and, was sick of certain elements of the industry. But, he's got great skills, and I, we discussed for a while about coming together and using those skill sets. Now, I'm not going to get on the tools. Don't worry, I will if I have to, but I've got a primary role. But my role with him was around establishing a business that, one, he can thrive in, he can use his skills, but we both have a commitment and a passion for helping others And Lockie worked in Kerwin High and in disability, so helping people with disability. And I was shopping, and you could just, he's got such a personable sort of demeanour and kindness and patience. Don't worry, he's not always patient. But those attributes in the industry, I wouldn't say they're lacking, but they're not everywhere, to be fair. So to have skills in the trade, don't worry, there's at times I'm sure he second guesses his own abilities, as we all do.
Yeah, we all do.
But says, well, hang on, how do you use your skills? How do I use mine? That one, we can support our families, right? We know when our families are good, we're good. Two, we can help grow some of our own young people, and particularly Aboriginal males that don't always find that opportunity or get that opportunity in the trade sector, right? They might be there, but it's not easy. You got to know someone. You know, I know a dad, and I know this company, and so I'm fortunate to have some of those networks and skill sets. And I wanted to apply my business degree to something, which I do. I try to. And so we come together, and we started what we call Murra Multi-Bill Solutions. And Murra, from the Dieri language group, it talks about relationships and hands. So Murra, we say, wash your Murra is your hands, or, your Murra, it needs to be strong. And so Murra became, a word that resonates with, we've got to work with our hands, but just as important working with our hands, we've got to have good relationships with our clients, with each other, and with the community. So we established Murra 18 months ago now, and really sort of got going middle of last year, where we've got, 2 or 3 workers and a couple of young labourers. We had another young apprentice that it wasn't for him, and that's okay. I suppose now is creating a viable and reputable business that can deliver a quality service of carpentry work, and we do some landscaping and commercial space as well. But just as important is bringing through the next generation of young people that want to be chippies, that want to be concreters, that want to be plumbers, and connecting with like-minded businesses. We've got great trades around us, electricians, roofers, plumbers, tilers. As their business grows, and we can help their business grow through our connections, they do well. But also when they start to do well, I'm going to be knocking on their door. Have you got a job for this young fellow, or can you give this young person a go? This young lady wants to be a tiler. Well, we help each other, and that's part of our responsibility, and that is a tradesman's responsibility to bring the next generation through, to ensure that we can have strong houses. We've got innovation, we've got plumbers to upkeep these houses as well. So my vision is to grow that. I don't want to be rich. We come together not to be rich. We come together to use our skills to ensure we can be remunerated and pay our bills, and have fulfilling lives. And most importantly with that is help our communities, get people in the trades. So pretty simple. And that's our goal, and that's what we'll stick to at the moment.
Simple but very elegant and beautiful as well. I love listening to you speak.
I don't think anyone else would call him elegant.
I'm sure a few blokes he played footy with in the past. I think it's a Janelle thing. Do you have any last questions, Morgan?
Probably just with the lead up to Reconciliation Week coming at the end of the month. Just any words of wisdom you have as businesses, what we can do to, bridge that and keep moving forward as a country with a shared future, and especially, our conversations around youth and what that looks like. So anything that, and we've talked about too that RAPs don't always, have the best result, and that also a plan which kind of comes to an end, which then what do you do after that, right? So I guess as businesses, what can we do to keep building our reconciliation, and all year round, not just in Reconciliation Week?
Yeah, I think it's an important time of the year to sort of reset what our our businesses are doing, what our community's doing, what our organisations are doing. So I think Reconciliation Week's an important time of the year. I think, firstly, understand where reconciliation came from, right? And it actually came from an inquiry about deaths in custody and other reports where it said we've got to make change. And our people were part of that voice at the time. And it was around setting a new way to actually build reconciliation between Indigenous people of this country and other Australians. But it come from a place that wasn't good, and was then to say, well, how do we create better? Unfortunately, reconciliation action plans, the intent was great. The execution, I would argue, isn't. That RAP shouldn't sit out here. RAP should be abolished. It should be part of your action plan. What is our action plan? To have impact, to ensure that the barriers we've created are addressed, to ensure that they aren't impacting our community. And if they're not impacting our community, then we've got reconciliation, right? So I think first understand reconciliation. People say to Indigenous people, what are you doing for reconciliation? Actually, we're not here to reconcile with ourselves, right? It's for the whole of Australia to go, hey, what can we do? Reset for this year, into the next year. What can we do? One thing differently. Is it about taking on one Indigenous person? Is it going down to the local Indigenous organisation to understand how I might be able to help? Set up an event, an activity, right? A school, a business, right? That you could share some skills and knowledge. If everyone done one of those things well, how better off would we all be? Wouldn't be hard.
Yep.
So celebrate it, learn. I think I encourage to go out and learn about what amazing things are happening in our communities, because we always hear not always about the amazing things, but also be aware of the things that aren't working and the role that many Australians can play, improving outcomes for the relationship between First Nations people and the rest of Australia.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you'd like to add, or message that you'd like to have included, or anything we haven't covered?
I'll probably just the personal journey that we're on around how do we ensure we come together, and we're starting to think about how do we create an economy that is more around custodianship, right, versus ownership. And how do we ensure that a custodian economy serves the potential of every person in Australia? That the reinvestment is actually going to the need of the individual or the family. So watch this space. I think there's an enormous amount of great businesses, organisations, and services in our country that want to give back. And you spoke about that, and I've talked to you about that. And we don't want our investment going to waste, right? And we don't want our investment to be locked up in KPIs. We actually want them locked up into impact and outcomes, and really good outcomes, such as jobs, such as affording houses, such as food on the table, such as work boots to start your job in the trade, or fresh clothes. So you're not judged. That's the stuff we need to think about, because then the economy then serves the biggest need of our community. That problem now becomes a solution to even a far greater economy.
And that one thing that you can do, though, then can possibly have a knock-on effect. So, it's not like people feel like, okay, well, this person is unemployed. I don't have a job for an electrician. I can't do anything about that person. But, simple things that, say, for example, Morgan's opened my eyes to that we've done as a business is looking at our supply chain. So what do we buy? In the beginning, I was like, we buy paper and water and coffee. Like, what am I going to do about engaging with an Indigenous business? Or what am I going to do about more diversity in my supply chain? Or, finding female-owned businesses like us that we can engage with. And it's not necessarily that I can go and offer employment to someone, but I can identify an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander owned business, and I can give my money to them for them providing me with the service that I need, and then they can give that person employment. So we ran a event for International Women's Day this year, and we made a commitment that every service that we engaged with in that supply chain either needed to be an Indigenous owned business or a female owned business, everything from the flowers to the restaurant and everything. And we did it. And to be honest, it was not that hard. And I know that that's hard. And that's because I've been introduced to someone like Morgan, like what you were saying about the network that you've established over the course of your life and the people that you have connection with. You've worked hard on those connections, and that's a credit to you. And then same with Morgan. She's got authentic, great relationships with people that make that seem so easy. But I think the message that I want to give is that you can have an impact, and it can be just one thing. And if you don't know how to figure that out, speak to someone like you or speak to someone like Morgan who could tell you off the top of their head one thing. I had one conversation with Morgan. She flicked me an email and we were away. So, those things that it's not as hard as you think that it is. And even if you can't cure all the problems that you see, there's got to be one thing that you can do that has a ripple effect or a knock-on effect where you can actually have an impact in a person's life.
If you look at the Indigenous business sector, it's one of the fastest growing in the country, which is absolutely amazing. And listen, we won't do it on our own. I think to your point, the important part is we need partnerships, we need strong relationships, we need to ensure that Indigenous businesses are visible, but we also need to ensure that they're successful.
Yeah.
Now, those who are now well established as businesses, you remember starting, you needed someone to pay for your product or to give you some advice before you fell over. I think we lost 3,000 businesses in the last calendar year in Queensland. It's something pretty high. Any day we could all fall over. But we know that a thriving Indigenous business means a thriving Indigenous family, which means a thriving Indigenous community. Right? And there is enough evidence, we don't need any more research, that Indigenous businesses will employ more Indigenous people than a non-Indigenous business. Young employees will thrive better in an Indigenous business. On most cases, not always. Why? Because there's a cultural understanding, right? And then if we can equip those young people, then we're then building a workforce too for Australia, not just Indigenous businesses, because the economy serves Australia, right? So, yeah, I agree. I think I encourage those who are looking to do an event or looking to buy toilet paper, that there are Indigenous suppliers, there's Indigenous tradespeople. And I think, go back to my point earlier, that the greatest opportunity is helping these young people or these early starters in business succeed, because we then have a stronger community, we have a stronger relationship, we have stronger outcomes, and we have a stronger economy. And we can then give back. We can give back to our community services that they mightn't have the funds for housing for domestic violence issues. So we can fund those houses, right? We can help with mental health care. The cost's going to go through the roof. One thing in our country that I was only speaking to this morning, that dental is underfunded.
Massively.
Right?
It's so expensive and covered by Medicare.
The dental health of some of our children and even our community members is extraordinary for all different reasons, right? Their social circumstances, their education, their access. And we, in our community organisations, that dental service is the most under-resourced service in anywhere in health. The deficits are through the roof. But if you own a dental practice, I've never seen a dental practice go broke yet, right? And so for me, it's thinking about how do we ensure that our economy can serve that gap, that a kid can go to school with a smile that they're proud of, that they can eat breakfast without being in pain. You know, that old people can have dentures so they can chew food. And so when we talk about businesses doing well, they do invest. They reinvest into kids' sports, into local football teams. I'm not saying that no one else does that, but we do. We invest a lot back into, and sometimes no reward, you know. But we know that it's going to the right thing or doing the right thing. So this reconciliation, get out, go meet a new business, engage a new business, help a new business, right? You might have a marketing expert says, hey, do you have a marketing expert? We can give you a hand.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
That's time you're not going to get back ever.
Thanks for tuning in today. Before we wrap up, here's an important disclaimer. Everything we've discussed is for information purposes only and should not be considered personalised advice. Whether we touched on legal, financial, medical, about your specific situation before taking any action. Got any questions about today's episode or ideas for future topics? Reach out to the Helix team. We'd love to hear from you. If you found value in today's conversation, please share it with someone who might benefit or connect with us on social media. Thanks for being part of our community, and we'll catch you next time.